and welcome to today's training on the power of the heart and how to live with an open heart. And I wanted to bring this topic in because it is so valuable, so deep, and as well as scientifically backed, and something that many of us still don't know and haven't really heard of in this way before. We often, know and can talk about the heart from a physical standpoint and the importance um, of it and its functions to keep us alive, keep us healthy, etc. While today I want to talk and speak to the heart in a different way, the heart as an energetic instrument, as the um, as the energetic instrument that it is, and that we now know, and thankfully, through science, we now have that to uh, bring that piece in so that we can better understand it and allow that our mind to even kind of process this information. And so I am going to share some more about the message around this with you, and then I will guide you through uh, a heart meditation and really an activation to connect to and start opening your heart. So I'm so glad that you're tuning in today, and I have a few notes just to kind of keep me a little bit of a structure, but I am going to allow this really to flow through as well. And so I mentioned the heart as an energetic instrument, right? And so what am I speaking to? What do I mean by that? And so we know from really many different modes of thought and teaching now, we know that the heart is an energy center. It is, it has a motor to it. And so that's where calling it an energetic instrument, it really is something to be used beyond what we know about it, within our physical body. More than right, it has valves to pump blood flowing through our body, which we need and we so appreciate. We also want the energy to be flowing through our heart. And that's really when we have an open heart, we have energy flowing through there. Where if when we kind of have a closed heart, that energy is not able to flow through. And so we actually know that the heart and brain, it communicates, and that is actually a two-way network. And so while our brain sends messages to our heart is actually also sending messages to our brain. And so uh, as we are living our life, having experiences, conversations with people, going about our way, um, we are inputting uh, essentially energy. Everything is really made up of energy, which now we have science too that can speak to that and can get very complex and go very deep into that. But just to keep it really simple, we know that even as I'm speaking to you, the words are coming out and you're hearing and listening to me. That is in a form of energy. And so what that does is the energy comes in and really can be come in through our heart. And depending on if we're having an open or a closed heart, it influences how that energy is able to flow through, or really it's not as able to flow through, almost as if there's kind of a clog in it. So just like when we think of heart conditions, or right, or even a healthy heart functioning, we want the blood flow to be going through the valve. Whereas when there are heart issues, right, there's can be a lot of different reasons, but there's something clogging that. So you can think about it in the same way, um, only from an energetic standpoint, that it's not able to flow through. And so, for this to make a little bit more sense, we know that Um, the messages that are actually the brain is sending to the heart have more to do with um, the physical ability or the physical health of how our body or how our heart is functioning. Where the messages from our heart to our brain are actually more, it is the way the heart is signaling to the brain, which what that influences is our perception, our emotions or emotional state, as well as our ability to process them through thinking, right? The cognitive processing that happens. And so uh, from knowing that, right, we can uh, intuit, we can imagine how it is important that our heart is also able to communicate with our brain, and because it's literally influencing how we're perceiving our experiences, how we're perceiving ourselves, others, our life, um, and and really even the emotional experience that we're having. And so, as I've spoken to energy, right? So even like as I'm speaking to you, that being energy, what's happening is that is energy coming to you in the right, that's really like in the form of a wave. And we're not going to get into all of the scientific aspects behind it, but knowing that that is coming in and then it has to get translated. So for to even be able to understand, right, that energy comes in and then it's perceived. So from this context of a conversation, it's perceived through our heart, um, influences the emotions we're experiencing, and then the message is signaled to the brain for that to actually transmit as information for like for us to actually understand what we're even listening to, and so that's where the brain, right, organizes that into information that we can understand mentally, right? And so what happens is when let me see here where yeah, and so what happens, right? So we have experiences, and basically, when we can think of like an open heart is when we are uh, essentially running love through it. So we're able to feel feelings of love. That's how we actually even fall in love, or have, feel love or loving for an experience, a person, etc. And when we have a closed heart, right, we're kind of closing ourselves off to love, right, to the feelings of love, to receiving that, to giving that. It's closed, right? And we can also view this as a way like um, why that might be happen is as a way that is trying to protect itself, right? And so through experiences or things that have felt hurtful to us or vulnerable or in some way, right, that it felt like it needed to protect, that's how and why we may have closed off ourselves to love and closed off to our heart. And so we're not really able to allow experiences to run through that or to even in our heart to be influenced or influencing the experience, right? The perception that we're having. And so what happens is then it's blocked essentially, right? It's closed off. And this happens from stored, unfinished energy. And what I mean by that is it hasn't completed the process. And so if we have an experience that felt tender to our heart, hurt us in some way, um, which can be as simple as, I mean, it can be simple, it can go deep, right? But we've had that experience and that energy didn't flow through, right? It became sticky. It touched on something that hurt us. And so essentially it's like stored in there. And so as a as a we can think about this in terms of trauma too, and just bringing in my background as a trauma therapist. Right? A trauma is any experience. It doesn't have like it can be a life or death experience, but we also know that we um, have trauma patterns or survival patterns around just experiences that we perceive to be hurtful. We perceived to, yeah, just kind of that were hurtful in some way to us. So it can be something small, especially, right? Like, even as a child, right? We go to our parent and we're wanting their attention, and they're busy doing something at the moment, and they, aren't able to give us their full attention in that moment. Even something as simple as that seems harmless. Like, depending on how we're perceiving it, that could be something. It could be, um, someone says something to us, like maybe we're in this open state, and then we have a conversation, someone says something that we don't like, or right, touches on something, and that can even elicit kind of a response of closing our heart, depending on our experiences, depending on the state of our heart currently, right? And so, are we holding, or do we have a lot of stored unfinished energy, which is from unfinished experiences, right? That brought up some emotion in us and then it didn't complete for whatever reason. Whether that is maybe we were suppressing that emotion, we didn't feel like, or we weren't in an environment that we were able to like fully express that or go through that. Like, there's a lot of different things that could come up, but just thinking about it as that, from those, that's what's like getting stored in the heart, which is not allowing things to pass through over time or over multiple experiences of that. You can imagine, right, how that becomes more closed off, and how we may be blocking ourselves from really experiencing, um, not only love, but really the intelligence that our heart is there to offer, right? Or the purity of the experience versus we're having different perceptions, emotions, and then, right, it's signaling to the brain and that cognitive processing, the thoughts around it. And so then we have kind of our perception of how that experience went. We have the story, we have the, let's just leave it at that. We have the story mentally about that. So, right, if we have had a lot of hurt, or so that this can even, let me see how else I want to explain this. Um, yeah, and so right, like there's if we have that's how if we have like these negative experiences, we're having negative thoughts, or we're when we view a certain situation or circumstance in our life, a lot of negativity comes up around that. That certainly one of the aspects is, right, we're overactively using our mind, where how and what that happens is, right, our heart is closed off, so we're not getting that two-way signal from heart to brain, brain to heart. It's likely probably going one way, right? The heart to the brain is not as clear. And so every time that we're experiencing something that's touching on that, we have to like be able like go through and feel all of that negative experience or have the negative thoughts and be able to go through that to get to the heart. And oftentimes that's where it's getting stuck. That's where we're like, then we're stuck, we're kind of looping in that, and we're not able to get to actually what the heart's message would be because it's still closed off, because there isn't, again, thinking about it as a valve, like blood flowing through the heart, same way that the energy is not flowing through the heart. And this, like I said, not only closes us off from receiving and giving love, it really eats up our capacity, because as I mentioned in the beginning, the heart is a motor, it's an energy center. We actually are We can generate and have a lot of our energy can come from having an open heart, right? And so if that's closed off, if we're holding hurts, pain, that within our heart, that unfinished energy, it's really eating up our capacity. It's taking a lot of capacity to remain closed, to remain protective of that, which is really essentially, um, right, we can respect and honor, like it's trying to keep us safe and protected from additional hurt, where it's also preventing us from really experiencing love or positive experiences or um, a harmony within our body, really the feel good part of of our experiences, right? And so that's why we really want to be able to open up our heart. And we want to be able to finish the energy, right? Which is likely, right? Some unprocessed emotions, which emotions are just energy. So it's about opening that up so it can flow through. And that doesn't mean that we need to necessarily go through, um, because sometimes that can feel daunting, like going through every single thing that ever happened that closed off my heart. But we need to have awareness of what that is. So we can do that from our present experiences and from what's happening currently. So just even bringing awareness to the interactions that you have through your day or the actions that you're taking, the activities that you're engaged in, and noticing when your heart wants to close off. When you might go from like, oh, everything's going okay, my day's going, fine, I'm moving along, and then something happens and it changes a bit of the state that I'm in, or it changes where my heart wants to kind of close off, like, oh, I didn't like what they said, or oh, I'm not feeling, uh, you know, not only love, but I'm not feeling open to that person, that thing. Like something's kind of closed off. I don't necessarily want to hear what they have to say. And yeah, and so to speak to some of the, like I mentioned, there's a lot of different ways, and now we've proven this. So the Heart Math Institute is one of the, and really a main uh, center that's done a lot of research around this, around um, the power and the intelligence of our heart, and also about the heart brain coherence is how they refer to it, right? Which is this message, the message that I'm saying, right? And making sure that that is in coherence and in harmony. And the HeartMath Institute is connected to Joe Dispenza's work. So if you've heard of him, like he is, I'm not sure if he's like the founder, but he's they are connected. He's part of that. And so if we're looking for scientifically, we want to know that he's very much into giving the scientific research and backing so we can really understand it from that aspect. We also know this has been taught from yogic teachings, any energy, healing work, different things can touch on that, but we are, and really intuitively, that can be something like we can feel and recognize the power of our heart. So there's a lot of different ways that we can look at that help us understand this concept and to be able to take it in as legitimate information, right? As truthful information. So I just wanted to mention that. Um, Let me see if there's anything else I want to go into. Yeah, and so the other thing is recognizing. So when the challenging things come up, when the experiences that are whether it's tender to our heart or they're become triggering, right? They're activating something even within our nervous system, within our survival patterning. Um, it often, right, can feel very challenging to kind of go through and be experiencing the body's reaction to that, and also the negative thoughts that can come up, right? The emotions that we're also experiencing. And so a lot of times it kind of feels like, oh, here this thing is again, or oh, I don't want to feel this, or right, if it can feel daunting, right? It can feel like something that we don't want to do. Where what we can really do is the perspective when we have an open heart, but even before we do, the perspective, the lens that we're shifting is recognizing this isn't happening to me. It's not happening, like it's not all my fault, and just I, wallow in the self-blame or the doubt or the uncertainty of what is even happening. But it's really no, recognizing it as an opportunity. So when that's coming up, it's really for you. It's an opportunity because it wants to be cleared. It wants to finish that cycle, right? And so when we're not able to actually digest or process that emotion or allow that energy to flow through, it doesn't finish, right? So then it might go away for that time and then something else happens and it comes back again. And that's how we end up looping or experiencing some of the same things over and over. And so, if we're able to recognize that as an opportunity, that it really just wants to be released, that energy wants to be released, the emotion wants to um, be processed, be digested, which actually then changes that energy. It transmutes that energy from this like negative, hurtful thing um, into something that has a purpose, into something that, right, just to dissipate that negative energy, and it opens something in our heart and allows that energy to flow through, right? The more that we are able to open that, then we're going to have those messages coming into our brain, which allows us to have different perception, allows us to experience a different emotion around it, maybe some of the more positive emotions that feel good to us, um, and allow us to process that mentally in a different way, right? That's the power of the heart. That's why this is so important and valuable for us to know. Otherwise, we're kind of just kind of looping the in the mental and the thoughts around it, and then right experiencing the same emotions that feel can feel hard, can feel challenging. And so that's to help you kind of understand the function of the heart, and then knowing that the heart is also, as I mentioned, it's where we can generate a lot of our energy. It's connected to the life force that's flowing through us, the energy that's flowing through us. So we want that to be open. And how we want to do that is clear out some of those um, energetic blockages or energetic, just what's stored there, right? And so one of the ways that we can do that, or one of the, is really the is heart opening practices, right? To help us um, that to be in coherence. So, like the Heart Math Institute actually has a device that can measure, right, how coherent that is, um, how those messages are flowing through, and is that something that's coherent, or is there something, right, that's not in harmony, that's not flowing through there, which would be speaking to everything that I was just sharing with you. So we want to be able to connect with our heart and open to it. And how we're going to do that is through like I said, these are heart opening practices. And then what I'm going to offer you today is a guided heart meditation, an opening, really just even to connect with our heart. Because a lot of times, if we've been closed off, or right, we're living a lot in our mind, we're having an overactive mind, uh, getting stuck kind of in mental loops or negative thoughts. We're not really feeling and accessing our heart as much as we want to, as much as we could. And so I'm going to, I think we can transition into doing that. So I'll do a second recording to start that. But just knowing whatever your experience is, take that in as information to know kind of where am I at with that. And knowing that no matter what it is, this is a step towards opening that heart, which will allow us to feel more love and more joy in our life, will also allow us to have more energy and to really perceive um, our experiences, our life, relationships, our circumstances in a different way. So I will go ahead and end this recording, and we'll start a new one to do the heart opening practice.